Hello, it's Angelica, and hoping to make a video response to a presentation by Karen Strowan, I had downloaded a video off YouTube, only to find shortly after that the channel has been deleted, for reasons unknown. But I'm going to discuss it anyway. So, symptomatic of 21st century systemic man-hating, the Canadian Association for Equality starts by explaining that they have been denied use of campus facilities for discussing men's issues.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. My name is Hayden. I'm the co-chair of the Toronto branch of CAFE, so I put on events like these ones. Tonight, we are having Karen. There's two reasons we're here. One, Karen, obviously, and two, because Ryerson students. The actual reason we're in this location is because we're unable to book a room at Ryerson. As many of you know, we have a men's issues awareness group on campus, unofficially. They have not been ratified by the student union, so there's that issue. If we were ratified by Ryerson, we'd be able to host events like this on campus. We'd have a suite of tools and equipment to be able to do that. So that's unfortunately why we're packed into this room. As many of you may or may not have heard, the Men's Issues Awareness Group recently lost their court case against the Ryerson Student Union.
This all sounds totally insane to me, that male students have to sue the student union to be able to discuss issues specific to them on campus.
Tonight's topic is the burden of being male. And so I want you all to imagine being a boy in middle school, maybe 13 years old. And one day you and all the other boys in school get pulled into the gymnasium for an assembly. And up at the front of the gym, there's a man from a charity called White Ribbon. And he's there to tell you how and why men abuse women. And the how is through physical, sexual, and psychological violence. And the why is because patriarchy. It's normative within our culture. It's just what men do. And in cultures like ours, patriarchies, men are elevated and women are subordinated. And society, this man says, doesn't really see anything wrong with men abusing their wives. Not at all. And he's here to tell you. He's here to tell you the incredibly rare message that it's never okay to hit a woman.
It's a simple biological fact that males are physically stronger than women, but that does not mean they are more violent. Another biological fact for which whiteribbon.org loves to shame men is that the male of our species is the one predestined to initiate sexual encounters. What they fail to acknowledge, here in New Zealand at least, is that the median number of sexual partners for young women is 3 times that of young men.
Now, at the end of the presentation, he asks all the boys to stand up and put their left hand on their heart and their right hand up in the air and take a pledge to not only never, ever abuse a woman or a girl in their lives, but to intervene when they see another man doing that. They are supposed to, these boys are supposed to pledge to stand up and intervene when a woman or a girl is being abused by a man or a boy. Of course, by this time, you've turned 13, and you've already been bombarded with messages about how it's never okay to hit a girl or a woman. You've heard it from your parents, you've heard it from your teachers, you've seen it in TV shows and movies and in the commercials in between. You've seen it on billboards and on posters. You've seen it at the bus stop and at the mall. You may have even heard it from those girls who hit you and then said, "You can't hit me back, I'm a girl." Now, what would you think of this exercise in the gymnasium? Why are they telling you this again? Why would they think it's important enough to pull you out of class and tell you something you already know? Do they think you're dumb? Or is it that they think you're just so bad that despite the fact that you've heard this a million times, the message just isn't going to get through to you? That you still think that it's okay to hit a girl?
Well, no, Karen. It's just plain old-fashioned brainwashing with intent to manipulate and control these innocent young men with shame and guilt for crimes they never did.
Imagine thinking of all those posters and t-shirts and everything else celebrating girl power. Thinking about all the times you've heard girls being told they can do or be anything boys are and can and will. Thinking about Beyonce's hit song, Who Run the World, Girls. Thinking about that girl in your class who wears the boys are stupid, throw rocks at them, matching scarf, hat, and mitten set in the winter. How confusing would that be? What exactly are you expected to be here? If boys and girls are equal, well, if girls can do anything boys can do, why can't they stand up for themselves? Why do they need you? And why do only boys need to be constantly reminded not to hit? So, what's so bad about boys that they need to be singled out like this? To be reminded how not to be bad? What's so special about girls that hitting them is somehow a worse crime than hitting a boy? Maybe if you were very precocious and analytical, you'd wonder why, in a world where girls run things, and where women can be and do anything a man can, and why would women and girls even need your protection? And you might even wonder why no one seems interested in protecting you. We do this to boys in North America, in middle schools, and in Australia, and in the UK. A few years ago, I attended a Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event in Edmonton. We noticed a bunch of young men in football uniforms and high heels standing there watching the speeches on the stage before the walk began. And one of our compatriots went and he was there incognito, went and talked to these boys, and they told him that they were essentially forced to be there. They had the option of not being there. There were uniforms from about 4 different high schools. They had the option not to be there if they were okay with being benched for 2 weeks.
What?
Yeah. So it was a forced participation thing. And while they were listening to the speeches, we handed them some literature and said, just give it a read later, give it a look later. And they quietly listened to the speeches, and then they dutifully walked their wobbly, teetering mile in high heels around Sir Winston Churchill Square, along with all the other men who were there to promote the radical and never before conceived notion that hitting women is wrong. So I'm just here to ask, what the hell are we doing to our boys and to our men? Aren't we demanding that they embrace 2 completely different paradigms, contradictory paradigms? In one, girls and women are their equals, every bit as tough, capable, resilient, self-reliant, and powerful as any boy or man. And in the other, girls and women are so vulnerable and fragile that they need to be treated with special gentleness and consideration, extra protection and respect. And they are so incapable that they need boys and men to rescue them from anything that might endanger or upset them. This is really what we're asking boys and men to do when we demand that they take collective responsibility, even as middle schoolers, for violence against women and girls. Collective responsibility.
A genetic guilt, a kind of innate sin that boys are born with. Now that is sexism.
Collective blame. And we're asking them to embrace that paradigm, that even though women are equal, men still need to do for them. You can see this reflected in campaigns against sexual violence as well. Current posters abound on consent and consent issues, particularly around alcohol. One that was particularly egregious, circulated at Coastal Carolina University in the US several years ago, read as follows, and I'm going to read it out. Jake was drunk. Josie was drunk. Jake and Josie hooked up. Josie could not consent. The next day, Jake was charged with rape. A woman who is intoxicated cannot give her legal consent for sex, so proceeding under these circumstances is a crime.
I think a lot of women are fully aware that they should own responsibility for the part that they've played, and they just need to be a little bit more honest about it.
It's still on the man to take responsibility both for his own behavior and for the decision of the woman. We see feminist initiatives that call on men to stand up for women and girls whenever they see any kind of violence or sexism against them. He for she, I'm sure some of you have heard of it, a much publicized UN women campaign spearheaded by celebrity Emma Watson, initially asked women to pledge a vow to stand up whenever they saw violence or sexism against a woman or a girl.
Well, I think it was more about asking men to make that pledge, but the contentious issue is that it's only about women and girls, and it's as if violence against men just doesn't matter.
After a few months of pushback on social media, they changed the message to be more gender neutral, but it's still targeting men, and that name still gives the same message. He for she. He for she. Not all for all. He for she. So what kind of messages are men and boys, particularly young men and boys, taking away from this culture? You don't matter. Girls and women do. It's your job to provide and protect for them. Be what girls and women need you to be. That's your role. Know your role. How is this any different from the messages of the past? Well, the messages of the past weren't so confusing. No one's allowed to actually say anymore that girls and women actually need you, that they're dependent on you. That's not allowed. Women and girls are independent, tough, strong, capable, competent. They can do anything you can do. Not allowed to say that you're needed. In fact, we're allowed to say that you're obsolete. And you're not allowed to get any gratitude for it at all, for the special role that you fulfill. Even worse, the pressure on young men these days to be successful and self-sufficient is just the same as it always was. But these men are actually then made to feel guilty about their success. If you succeed, you did it because you were able to do that because of privilege, male privilege. So when he wins, the victory was handed to him by patriarchy and all the unearned privilege it confers on him, and he didn't earn it. In fact, he stole it from someone who would have earned it if he hadn't been there exploiting his privilege to get it. And if he loses, he lost to a woman who essentially is portrayed as having one hand tied behind her back. A woman crushed by sexism and cultural norms in a society that runs on female subordination, yada, 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 yada. If he excels in the support role, he may even be accused of trying to take over or to mansplain or to impose his masculine will on the women around him and silence women's voices. A friend of mine put things this way. First wave feminism sought to give women men's rights without men's responsibilities. Second wave feminism sought to reduce or eliminate women's responsibilities. And third wave feminism seeks to increase men's responsibilities. And that's really the way I see it.
In essence, the social contract of symbiosis between men and women now seems to be kaput. Karen then went on to look at ways for society to proceed. However, I think that before that can happen, the gender narrative needs to change.